Welcome everybody. This is it's the pre-first J4K conference, so I wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out. Today we got some good sessions on Java, Kubernetes, the history of both those hopefully. And what I thought we'd do in this first session was not only just welcome us to kind of get us all together, because this is really like a committee together to understand where we want to go with this conference, but what I wanted to also was talk a little bit, or actually Cesar and I will go over some of the values, goals we're trying to do here. There's some unsurety of what we want to do, so we need to make sure that we as a team are going to talk about those over the next day and actually learn more. But I wanted to give some background on what we want to do. So I've had many jobs. I want to kind of describe that. I've worked on a farm, been a cook, been a radar technician, worked on air traffic control radar. But one job that was really, I think, important to me was a product manager. Because a product manager has to talk to other people about things, but always with a specific way, and it's with requirements. So has anybody been a product manager before? Yeah. You don't want to tell somebody what to do. You only want to tell people what you think. You want to talk about requirements that are going on that should affect what should be built in a product. So in the same way, when Cesar and I first started talking about this conference, it really started with a need and the requirements of what were going on. So I'm going to show a few slides. Cesar is going to show you a few slides. And in those, we're essentially going to talk about a need that we see in the industry. And that's why I prefaced this at the beginning, that there are still things that are unknown that we want to work together to decide what this conference can be. So these first few slides, forgive me, everybody in here knows everything I'm about to say. But I'm going to recover them because it's going to point us to kind of a requirement that maybe we missed. So the first one is Java is important. And here's the TOB index in the slide that'll be hidden that won't be shown if you want to look at the slides later. It's the Red Monk language review. So Java is important. It's clearly important. For years, and I came out of Sun Microsystems in the past, for years we've dealt with, oh, Java's dead. And you guys have all seen, it was James Governor, right, who did the Java's dead is dead article. So, but it is important. And if you look at the second part of this slide, it even shows, hey, Java clearly dominates in the enterprise. And that's significant because what we need to understand as a group, that regardless of the growth of other languages, and there will always be multiple languages, there's multiple car vendors in the industry, but it's been around for over 20 years, and I think each of these bullet points is really important to look at. So it's been around for 20 plus years in the industry, right? And it's continuing to grow. New innovations are happening even now, right? Not only from, hey, Spring Boot to Jakarta to microprofile, there's even new things like Quarkus coming out. So there's new innovations happening. And think of it, because it's been around so long, there's entire ecosystems that have been built in enterprises. So they have these huge application environments that are not only just Java applications, but things that support those Java applications. So it's very important. But it's all moving to the cloud now. So things are happening, okay? Remember, we're pointing towards the idea of requirements. So Kubernetes is new, and if you obviously understand the J and the K, we don't really know what they mean in the J4K, right? So we make that clear, right, Cesar? The J and the K, we don't know what they mean for J4K. But Kubernetes is probably the K in that J4K. And Kubernetes is evolving. So even though Kubernetes is very important, enterprises are adopting it, it is still evolving. And that's important because it's a lot of new things, not just Kubernetes. It's going to affect enterprises in how they implement Java on Kubernetes, all right, or the JVM on Kubernetes. So at that very top, hey, if Kubernetes becomes a de facto platform and it changes our way of building applications, how does it affect this entire ecosystem? So I'm talking as an IT decision manager, as a CTO. How am I going to rebuild my application infrastructure? How do I redo processes and procedures? Who are the new vendors that I need to be talking to bring into that environment? So it's a big topic for me in understanding that. And ultimately, hey, with the constant evolution of what is part of that Kubernetes environment, how does that affect me? Because that's a big stress for me of understanding that. And then all that at the bottom, or at the underline, how is that going to affect the future of Java? All right, because Java is already going down a path. There's certain things from Jakarta EE, there's microprofile, there's reasons those things came about. But how will these things in Kubernetes affect the evolution of Java? And that's a big thing we want this conference to be discussing and thinking and helping to facilitate people getting together. But there's also these equally pressing things down here. And again, this is talking from an industry person, like an IT decision maker. So how do we optimize the existing workloads that we got to run in this new environment? How do we take all of those billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of applications that have been developed, not just the stuff that's running it, but the billions, what is it, $50 billion, $100 billion of things that have been built and developed. How do we, to take that forward? As well as how do we change or simplify development on Kubernetes? That one I think is one of the most pressing requirements that I think we need to think about when I talk about requirements. Is building on Kubernetes, is it supposed to be similar or simpler? In fact, if you think of technological changes over the last, well, forever. In fact, we were talking about it at breakfast. The drivers in technology that have driven what things become successful, become de facto standards, I don't think it's come back up. It comes back up. Has always been simpler, lighter weight, less complex, easier to get started. But Kubernetes is not that. It's making it more difficult. I'll have to read my bullets since these slides aren't up. But that is a big issue, I think, for the conference to think about. And as a community, and if we think of the conference as a community, how do we do that? How do we make this simpler? The next is, how do we leverage this Kubernetes and Java application environment across a hybrid cloud? And then last, what are the new architectures, platforms, and processes I need? So these are the kind of the requirements that I think the conference is going to address. I think we need to work together as a community to kind of suss out even more requirements and understand where we want to go. But try not to be constricted or constrained by maybe conferences of the past or other types of things that evolved us in the past, but really get community leaders together to kind of work on that. So I'm going to bring Cesar up to do the rest of the slides and maybe get the input back up. Should we unplug it and plug back in? Oh yeah, it's not. Don't let it go to the screensaver. Might have to pause the video. It's a good place to take a pause. Might work. Oh, it was there.
Wait, hold on. Is it advancing?
Yeah, I think when it went to screensaver, right? Was it screensaver?
No, I think it just got it's a bad cable, I think. All right. So sorry about the inconvenience. Thank you all for coming, as Paul mentioned. I appreciate your attendance. Good. So what's J4K? That's a question that we've been discussing with Paul for the last few weeks. And we want J4K to be a community to help solve the pressing needs that Paul described earlier within the industry. We're calling it, as you can see on the tagline, it says one Kubernetes, one Java, all clouds. And the reason that it says that is, as Paul mentioned, Kubernetes pretty much has won the market. Okay, so organizations are heading in that direction of Kubernetes, and that's the future. And now the next thing to focus on for organizations is, how do I run my applications and middleware efficiently on Kubernetes? And the point here is, just containerizing your workload and running on Kubernetes is not enough. Okay? It's actually thinking about how to develop technologies and how to optimize existing technologies to run efficiently and in an optimized way on Kubernetes. And on clouds, because as you know, there are major cloud providers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, IBM, and others, that organizations and companies are using more and more instead of using an on-premise data center. So hybrid cloud, multi-cloud deployments are becoming the norm. So J4K as a community, so what does that mean? We would like to provide a forum to discuss ways to, and we've listed some things here. One of them is, how do we evolve Java for containers and cloud? A good example is Quarkus, for example. The way it's been designed and created is specific for running on Kubernetes and containers. Discuss ways to optimize applications and middleware for Kubernetes. Create new frameworks, techniques, and tooling for developing applications in Kubernetes, and develop hybrid cloud and multi-cloud applications. Again, like I mentioned before, containerizing your existing app is not enough. So now let's come back now to the conference. So J4K, the conference, is the first step into this overall message of J4K as a community. And the idea of this conference is to bring the best of open source and middleware communities for developing applications on Kubernetes. So as we look at this conference as the first step, it must serve the community. And we thought of 4 different ways that we can serve the community. One of them is could serve to educate, right? Who? The industry and the community as well. And with what? By providing specific sessions and tracks within the conference, providing hands-on workshops, forums, and meetups. And out of this endeavor, we want to collect feedback, not just from developers, and also from ISVs that we can put back out to the community for them to consume and learn from. It could be in the way of forums, surveys, annual reports. Also, the conference will serve to collaborate. Developers, community leaders, and ISV will come together, as well as vendors, and collaborate at the conference, and through panels, workshops, forums, and meetups as well. And the whole thing is to serve and actually not just to serve the community, but also it's also for the ecosystem. Java has a very large ecosystem, and with applications running in Kubernetes, there's an ecosystem growing as well of tools and utilities around those technologies. And with what? By having an exhibit hall, as well as the sponsors, providing demos, as well as meetups. Yeah, go ahead. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I wanted to add a little bit. So the idea of the conference is not to create a conference, create a conference. Now that sounds redundant. But the idea is that we don't want to just create another conference. I think there is a need in the market, back to requirements, for a conference that is really more of a community, which means first and foremost, it's not run by a single company. This has to be a way to, again, the way I like this was, hey, Java and Kubernetes, it's difficult as heck. Remember the introduction of application servers, and it's like it was going to change the world and everything, and kind of did, but it was very complex. This seems to be even more difficult. And everything about Kubernetes that we've been thinking about was supposed to be more simple, but it's not. And again, we've got an evolution of Java, which is very significant, that we need to address. So this conference, this community that we're trying to develop here, really needs to be a new type of conference. And that's why we wanted to assemble a prequel like this, to get us together to talk about new ideas. What can be a different conference that really helps change and support these aspects? Like, we need to educate. And what it means by industry means both ISVs, so companies that are coming out with new products, they could come here and not only find about what's going on and get the pulse of the industry, but also we can communicate back to them, like this feedback idea. Here's what developers are saying. Stop it. Maybe vendors are putting out stuff that, like, it's wonderful, it's so cool, it has, Kubernetes written all over it, but it's freaking hard. So we can provide that feedback back into the ISVs, and from the ISVs back into the industry if standards or other specs are needed to be developed. It's really helping to work together. The collaboration, I think, is important because the future of Java and Kubernetes, and the JVM on Kubernetes is going to be driven by, we know it, specific community leaders. There will be specific, very important people that pop up that will have ideas, that will be driving things, whatever that means, activities, new communities, etc. We want them to be able to get together and collaborate together themselves. And then again, there's an ecosystem that's going to be developed. We're not the ecosystem. The ecosystem is out there. It's going to exist, but we want to make sure that we have a conference that can support that ecosystem as it grows. So what we're saying here is almost a call for help. So we know, I started this with about the idea of requirements. We need to have a community of smart people working together to help drive those requirements and do it on an equal footing. This needs to be a true community. not run by an individual, not run by a company, not run by an organization. So that's what we're trying to say here. Hopefully that's clear. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it does. Couldn't have said it any better. Oh, yes. Right. So the question is, what about the DevOps and security people, right? How do they fit? Yeah, so security, as you know, is number one and number two concern for us CIOs, right? It comes up every year on different surveys that come out. So DevOps, DevOps is becoming very popular. It allows you to deliver applications faster than before by basically automating the delivery pipelines. They are definitely aspects of this conference and topics, and I am pretty sure that they will be covered in the tracks of the conference for sure. Yes.
So I think the DevOps community is already being. I think the DevOps community is already being served to a large degree. Like if you go to KubeCon and places like that, there's a venue for them to kind of get together and discuss. I think what Cesar and Paul are talking about is more about, well, what about the application developer, right? Specifically the Java application developer, and what venue do they have, right? And that's kind of, I think, the target for what they're trying to do. Not that we couldn't include some of that, but there's already venues, I think, for the DevOps folks.
Yes. When we mentioned earlier that this is the conference for how to optimize and run applications and middleware on Kubernetes, the spotlight is on the applications and middleware, not on the operational layer, which is Kubernetes, which, as John mentioned, there's plenty of conferences like KubeCon that you can attend to that focus just on that. Okay, that's an interesting, difference that it's worth highlighting. Any more questions? Okay. So, and we have 3 minutes, so I'm going to rush real quick. So as far as 2020, this is when the big conference is, the first conference will take place. This is the prequel. And the location is going to be in Orlando, Florida, spring of 2020. The theme, there will be tracks and themes. They are to be determined. We're thinking that the call for papers will probably be open sometime in November and will run through January. Obviously, there will be a process in place to determine what sessions get selected and what tracks are defined. There will also be hands-on workshops during the conference, sponsored. There will be special events, for example, for an organization called Women Who Code. There will be also diversity scholarships. There will be a community leadership meetup. Excuse me. We're working still on the prospectus, so that will be available soon. And there will be there will be a fun closing event. The theme is Star Wars, so get prepared to bring your best Star Wars outfit. And so that's for the 2020 event next year. And as Paul mentioned before, we would love to hear from you, your feedback. There's a survey that we put together with some questions with respect to tracks and topics, and we'd love to hear from you. So if you have some time, please go to this bit.ly J4K 2020 and provide your feedback. It's just like five questions. It's short. And beyond J4K 2020, going back to the idea of J4K being a community beyond just a conference, what else could it be beyond 2020? We could have meetups led by, on special topics where leaders within the field could participate and deliver or be the main speakers. We could align with major open source software organizations. We could be actively involved with ISVs and GSIs, as well as developer communities and leaders. And we could also work on community resources, things like a content library, video library, have a Google group, have regional meetups. Heck, maybe have J4K conferences throughout the world at different cities. So, so that's all we had. Any questions? No? Good, because it's 9:30, and I think the next speaker is up, and Ray. Yeah. So thank you very much, and thank you for being here, and welcome to J4K.